Thank you for joining another episode of Knocked Up After the Shot. Um, Want to invite you back tonight to kind of get back on the routine. I know I've said this before. Life is busy for everybody, so I always appreciate any one of my guests that carves out a piece of their time to give to me, to give to my community, to chit chat about hunting and all sorts of stuff. So, thank you guys for watching, and a special thanks to our guest tonight for doing the same, being here with us. So, pour you up a drink, just like always. Take a little sip, and we're gonna get rolling. Shout out to Hoot for making this possible, and Ghost Strings. Make sure you guys check out their stuff in the link in the description below. We are sitting right at the first week of archery season here in Texas. So if you don't have your gear, check out Hoot, and then make sure you go over to Ghost Strings, get your strings, come over to me, set up at the pro shop, and we'll get you ready to rock and roll. So without further ado, we are going to jump into it. Josh and I spent some time together at the Colorado Total Archery Challenge, and he was showing me some stuff and just kind of hit it off, and been kept in touch since then. So we're just going to drink, we're going to talk, we're going to have a good time, stick around, hang out, pour yourself a drink, throw it on in the background while you're taking your bubble bath. I don't care. It's all good. Chill out and just enjoy it. So let's get right on into it. Josh, how you been, man? What's up, brother?
Good. I can't help with any of the technical difficulty stuff.
Yeah, I can hardly help myself when it comes to the technical difficulty stuff. So don't feel bad. So yeah, you've been around the block. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And we met at TAC. And how'd you get roped into those guys and everything? First of all, correct me because I know I was wrong in the intro. Who's the gentleman that I was talking to? The older guy that runs the shot with you. What's his name? I'll put you on the spot. Corey.
And so Corey works for TAC, and so he was in charge of all of the money shots, basically. So anything that had a contest to win by hitting a target, he was managing the funds for it, the tickets and everything, and then writing down everybody that was successful. And they just threw me up there because Tacticam has a partner that sorry, I'm trying to think how to word it. I got distracted. So Tacticam partnered with them for the truck shot, for the 111-yard shot or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so they reached out to me since I don't work for Tacticam by any means, but I'm partnered with them. And they asked me if I wanted to cruise over to Glenwood. It's about 5 hours from where I live in Colorado, and hang out for the weekend and just record shots. And so that was my first time meeting Corey or even going to a TAC event. And it was awesome. I had a really good time. I met a ton of people. And what's funny is because of the stuff that I do with social media, I couldn't even tell you how many people I met that weekend that told me about their social media stuff and about their TikTok and about their YouTube and their podcast. And I went home with, a stack full of cards of people that do that. And I started checking stuff out. And I was real careful to not make any commitments to like partner with anybody, tag them or whatever, because I kind of wanted to see what they do before I agreed to be like associated, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So, if I remember right, there's only you and one other guy that I still keep in touch with since that event, just because I like what you do and you're straight up about what you do. And there's a lot of people that have a lot of flash and other stuff that they throw into their videos that I don't think is very productive for hunting in general.
Sure. No, yeah, that was a good time. I remember. I mean, we must have sat there and talked for like 10 minutes until it was my turn to miss every one of my shots. It was a rough day for me, but we don't need to revisit that. But
speaking of which, I finally, because I had to give my SD cards up to Tacticam after all the shots. They copied everything and then they sent me my SD card back. So I just got it like 2 weeks ago.
Sweet.
So I have to go through like 3 days of filming every shot, but I do have your shots on video. So,
sweet. I'll have to get those. I'll have to get those from you in March whenever you get through all 3 days of
right?
all 3 days of the shots. No, that'd be cool. That'd be sweet. No, we had a good time. I appreciate you being on the show, if you will. I just like to, address different people with different kinds of views and stuff like that. So it's really cool to get you on here and talk about what you do. You're the first one I've had on the show that's actually been a guide or actually been really committed in the outdoors to
Yeah.
like spending their life doing what they do in the outdoors on the podcast anyway. So
Yeah.
it's been pretty cool to get you on to do that. I guess I didn't realize it was your first tacked event. I must have been high when I thought I met you in Oklahoma. It must have been somebody else.
Well, so even Corey thought that he met me in Oklahoma. So
Must have been a guy who looked
whoever
just like you.
whoever was working for Tacticam at the other TAC events, a lot of people thought that I was the same guy.
Yeah.
So you're not the only one.
Okay, that makes me.
But I
feel good.
guess I could probably give a little bit more background there with like me and what I got into. So I grew up hunting elk in the mountains because I live in Colorado, and that's what my dad does. My dad he's an old cowboy. He spent most of his 20s on a horse in the mountains all summer long. He lived in they call them Forest Service cabins,
Yeah.
but they're just cabins out in the middle of the national forest. And he would take young horses up there with him, and he'd spend his summers checking cows and breaking horses. And then he'd come down and he'd spend his winters with the cows in the winter range, and that was what he did. So my first hunt when I was 12 years old, my dad and I, just two of us, we packed all of our gear on horseback. About 8 hours into the national forest, we set up a wall tent and we just lived out there for 9 days. And that was how I grew up hunting from the time I was 12 until I was 18. And through that and a lot of other stuff I did with horses growing up, I got a pretty good reputation of being a horseman in general, that I could handle horses in the mountains. So then I left for the Marine Corps right after I turned 18. I came home 4 years later, and I got home in May. And in June, I was asked by an old friend, his dad was an outfitter, and they asked me to come pack that fall. Typically, that just means I should be packing hunters in, supplies in, and any elk they take out. Well, the night before, or the day we showed up to pack in for the very first hunt, one of their guides didn't show up, and they couldn't get a hold of him. And this was in 2010. And so the outfitter asked me if I was if I could ride in the dark, and two, if I could guide. And I said, yeah, I just got to go down and grab my gear. So I turned around, I drove about 2 hours home to my house, grabbed my hiking and my hunting gear, came back. They had left me one horse, and I jumped on it right at dark and rode into camp in the dark and started guiding. And I was pretty successful, and I've been guiding every fall since. I've worked for 4 different outfitters now. I'm with the 4th one now, who is actually the son of the first outfitter that I worked for. And he's one of my best friends. And then what kind of got my social media stuff really rolling was I kept having clients show up that were having problems that were of their own making in a way. And there was specifically an older gentleman that hunted with me that had 4 opportunities on elk in 5 days during the rifle season. And the first one was at 400 yards. I wasn't with him for that one. I had a different client, and he missed the bull at 400 yards. So the next day I took him, and he had 2 opportunities on bulls at 200 and 215 yards. And he wasn't comfortable. He wasn't steady. He couldn't find him in his scope. So the next day I put a 5x5 bull broadside at 100 yards, and he couldn't find the bull in his scope. So
wow.
I was just like, I need to talk to more people about this so that they can prepare. So I just did a TikTok, and I was like, hey, at home in your living room, find a target that you can look at, stare at it, and then raise your rifle up and find it. And do that repetitively so that you learn how to have that target acquisition with your rifle.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turned into, practice sitting on the ground or sitting on your ass when you're at home. because we're so used to sitting in chairs that really when you go out in the forest and you have to sit on the ground, it's uncomfortable. You get sore, your legs fall asleep, one thing or another. But that's something you can practice at home if you're serious about preparing for a hunt out west. And it kind of took off. And now every day I get questions and I respond to them with my honest opinion on it. And sometimes it pisses people off that I offended their favorite caliber or their method of take or their camo, something. But in all reality, I really like I don't like the idea of an echo chamber where everybody thinks that I know what I'm talking about and that I have all the answers, because I have guys that agree with me 90% of the time. But then when they do disagree with me, they let me know and they tell me why. And that's a lot more interesting than everybody just saying, yes, I agree all the time. So,
yeah, that's cool. The scope thing is interesting, how you put your, I don't know if it was your first TikTok or whatever, but your scope thing is interesting because it's almost the same concept of you're sitting on a ridge or whatever and you're glassing and then you bust a spotting scope out. You're going from one glass to no glass to a higher magnification glass. And I struggle with doing the spotting scope. I'm just not as versed in that as I am. I could all day long just sit there, look at something, throw a binos up and look at it. So I feel like I'm pretty good with that, but then going to the spotting scope's crazy. I want to back up to the horse stuff. I've ridden horses before, done a couple things here and there, but you mentioned something in your statement that said, can you ride at night? What's the difference? Like I get like hiking at night is a little bit different. You got, it's kind of maybe the same thing in my head, but at the same token, I'm like, I don't know, you're riding a horse. It's night. Oh, well, I don't know.
So the tricky part about riding horses at night is you can't have lights. That's what he was asking.
So you're hoping for a full moon?
Not even that. You just have to trust your horse. So like I would never ride into somewhere blind that the horse has never been to. Okay. That's the catch with riding at night. If you turn a headlamp on, then one, the horse can't see as well as their natural eyesight would allow them. Really? But two, every shadow that moves is going to startle the horse for the most part. So it's a general rule that you go lights out. And again, like I learned that when I was a little kid. Like my dad and I, it never failed, with me as his helper at 12 years old, and I wasn't I was 12 years old. But when it's time to pack up camp the last day, by the time we get everything organized, weighed, lashed to the horses, ready to go, it never failed. We'd ride out in the dark. And I remember the first time that I did it, I was 12 or 13. And I specifically remember not being able to see anything and asking my dad if I could turn a light on. He said, no, just trust your horse. And I remember we rode into this little pocket. Now, the moon was out for the most part, but we rode into this little pocket of dark timber, like into a switchback. And I specifically put my hand up and went like this to see if I could see anything, and I couldn't. And right about then, if you've been on horses very much, my horse stepped on the edge of the trail and his hind foot kind of sloughed off. And so his hip dropped and I thought I was going to die. I still remember to this day that it scared me so bad. And all I wanted to do was turn a light on, but you just have to trust the horse. And now I couldn't even count how many times I've ridden in the dark.
So you say trust the horse, which I totally get. And I guess it makes sense for the first part. You'd never go somewhere the horse has never been to and from, right? Or at least to. So you're trusting the horse to be able to get there. But from my experience riding horses, I mean, it's not exactly like driving a car, but you're still in control. Do you just drop the reins and throw the hands back and say, Jesus, take the wheel, or what's the deal?
So like good mountain horses are going to go. If you're riding from, let's say, the trailhead to camp, and the horse has been there before, in theory, you should be able to drop the reins, whatever lead horse you're on, drop the reins, be hands-free, and let them go. And they're going to go to camp. And same, when you're ready to turn around, once you turn them around, headed back to the truck, in theory, you should be able to let go of them. They're going to follow the trail and go right back. I've only had one instance where I was on a horse and it missed a turn on the trail. And it was actually that same outfitter's camp. And it was a horse that I'd ridden quite a bit at that point. And I was riding in the dark, and all of a sudden I heard the sound, the hoof sound was different. I heard leaves instead of dirt. And so I knew we had missed the turn. And the second I heard the sound change, the horse stopped on its own. It just stopped. And so I knew I needed to figure out where we were at. So I turned the light on. I saw that we were only about 15 yards off the turn. And I turned her back around, and she got right back to the trail. And then she just went on down the trail the way she was supposed to. And that's the only time I can ever remember having one like miss the trail.
That's crazy.
And I have another, not to get into too many stories. I'm good at telling stories, but
hey, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, well, we had a guy named Jerry that started hunting with us when I was about 14, and he had his own horses. Essentially, my dad was very good at picking up strays, is the best way I'll put it. So like we'd find people that he was friends with or that would become friends, and he was so knowledgeable when it came to horses and hunting that if he gave them the invite, you could guarantee they were going to show up in camp. And so Jerry started going with us every year. And the very first year, same thing. By the time we got everything packed up and we're headed out, it was dark, and my dad told him the same thing: no headlights, trust your horse, just let him go. And my dad was in the lead. Well, you cross a creek, and there's a super tight switchback that goes back and forth. And so as you're riding across one, the horses ahead of you are already crossing right above you.
Makes sense.
And in the dark, not being able to see what we were doing, Jerry was headed this way, and he heard the hoof beats coming right above him that were going the opposite direction. So he thought that his horse missed a turn. So he tried to force his horse to turn, and his horse listened. And what that ended up doing was going up like that, and his horse flipped over backwards on him in the dark.
Damn.
So all we heard was a crashing and him yelling. He broke his saddle. It was a cheap saddle anyways, but luckily horses and Jerry are both tough. So, we turned the lights on, we got it all sorted out, and we just kept going.
So he wasn't hurt at all.
No, everybody's fine.
Wow.
I've seen horses on somersault down mountains, and I've headed down, expecting having put a horse down, and they're standing on all 4 feet, and they're totally fine. And they learn a lesson usually, but they're incredibly tough animals. I've never lost a horse in the mountains out of all the years that I've done it. So,
knock on. Right.
Yeah. And honestly, the guided hunts I do now everything is on private. We don't have Forest Service permits, so we don't use horses for hunts at all. So we got truck heaters and side by sides and winches and all the stuff that I wished I had when I was in the mountains, but there's definitely aspects to the mountain hunts that I miss. But
I was about to ask, do you miss the not having the horse? You'd rather have the side by side and the winch, or what?
I definitely miss like the wall tents and the mountain atmosphere, because it's just a different atmosphere. I don't know how to describe it, but
yeah.
I mean, you would understand. Like, I know you just did your hunts in Colorado. You get into the national forest, like it's that grass is always greener thing, because now I have the leases that are butted up right against the national forest.
Yep.
And I have so many people that wish they could come over and hunt that private, that are sitting on the forest watching the private, and we're sitting on the private watching the elk go onto the forest, and we can't go onto the forest after them.
Really?
But so because I'm outfitting, because I'm a guide, the way it works.
You talked about that one of your TikToks, that it was you had to have a permit, and yeah.
Right, you have to have Forest Service permits in order to go certain areas of the forest, and we can't get those right now because Colorado won't give them out to anybody. The only way we can get Forest Service permits is if we buy another outfitter's business, and that's it's just too expensive. We try to keep our hunt costs low, and we enjoy having working class men show up to come hunt with us instead of elites, and that's typically the case. Is most of the guys that we have are very ordinary, normal dudes that come hunt with us, and and I enjoy that. But
Yeah.
those guys aren't going to pay 10 grand for a 5-day hunt, which would be necessary if we were to buy somebody else's permits and try to pay off that business as well as maintain our current leases.
Yep.
So just
Yeah,
find a
that's crazy.
balance.
Yeah, that's wild. I guess I didn't, not until you released the TikTok, you made me think about it. I guess I didn't realize that even though it's public land, well, I guess not all national forest land would be considered public hunting land, correct?
National forest, yes, but
Really?
state land and Bureau of Land Management, those can have a lot of extra restrictions on them.
Yeah.
But national forest, for the most part, is usually very open and available for public use.
So is that, and this may be a gray area that you probably are going to give me the PS answer, the PC answer for. You're on private, you want to go hunt public, you yourself can't go, but technically speaking, your clients could.
Right. So the way that works, and we've had this situation arise with clients in the past where they ask that question.
Like if I was with you and saw that, I'd be like, "Hey, I'm good. I'll call you if I need you."
Right. So in theory, the way that should operate, the way that should happen, if you were a paying client of mine and you're under contract with me, and we're on our lease, but there's a monster bull over the fence that you want to go after, and your tag is good for that. Your tag will let you go onto the national forest.
Yep.
Since I don't have permits there, I can't cross. And at that point, as soon as you leave me, technically your contract is void. So even if you get it down, like I can't go onto the forest and help you with that. I can't. And I don't even know. I'd have to actually call the Forest Service or a game warden and ask them their opinion of it. Because what I'd be curious to find out is, like, if you get it to the fence of the private, am I then allowed to pick it up on the private and help you?
Right.
Where that would be the gray area that I don't know the actual legalities on.
Yeah.
So it's just the way they regulate it. And I understand why they regulate it the way they do. Like, I'm not mad at the Forest Service for it.
Yeah.
It's just, just the grass is always greener on the other side type of deal.
So if you know and can go a little deeper into that, why do they say that you can't go on? I mean, it's public land. I mean, I get you're outfitting someone, but I mean, you're outfitting your client. You're not stealing anything from, I don't know.
Right. The way the Forest Service views it is anybody that's making a profit and it involves the forest, they need to make a profit off of that profit.
Government, I get it.
Yeah, so like Colorado, it doesn't matter if you want to cut firewood, you have to buy a permit. If you want to guide clients, you have to buy a permit. If you the ski resorts that operate technically on national forest pay a huge amount. The cattle permits, the guys that run cattle on the national forest, they also pay. And it's all regulated in a way that it doesn't get overcrowded. Because outfitters are, even within a unit, they're given a certain compartment when they do have permits where they're allowed to operate, but they don't get free run of the entire unit. They can't go anywhere they want on national forest. They still are restricted to a small area that the Forest Service deems as they're allowed to use. And even with it, I mean, it just goes on and on. You have to report where you want to put camps, and they can tell you no. So like if you have a prime spot for where you want to set a camp, you have to submit it to the National Forest or to the Forest Service, and they will tell you yes or no. They might tell you, no, we don't want you to have a camp there. So it's there's so much to it. That's why I like being a guide, is because I don't technically have to deal with any of that. All I have to do is show up, guide guys where I'm allowed to guide them, and
go home
and hunt. So
that's crazy. That's crazy. I never thought about it like in the, I guess, the financial, monetary sense of they're going to get their piece of the pie.
Yeah.
So you hunt.
But then
go ahead.
Sorry. Then when I hunt for myself, I always get away from where I guide. So I go to public land, I go to national forest. All my personal hunts when it comes to elk, especially, is all done on public land. I don't hunt private for elk. So
Why is that? Why wouldn't you want to? Is that kind of like you don't want to, shit where you eat kind of deal, or is that the? I mean, it seems like you got all this information,
right.
right? Why would you just want to
Part
piss it away? Well, I mean, you probably have a lot more information than
yeah.
I would, but
Well, so part of it is I don't want to take an animal that could potentially be a client's. Um, the exception to that is predators. I'll kill any predator that I legally can on our leases.
naturally,
Last week we were hunting bear on our leases. But the other thing is honestly, I feel like I have better odds on the forest than I do on public land. I legitimately just think that there is better odds, at least in the region where I'm at. There's typically better odds to successfully harvest an elk on the national forest than there is on the majority of private.
really.
So, yeah,
Well, I
there's
can tell you my experience was not the same as your
right.
statement. I'm sure you saw the TikTok. It went home with a big old tag sandwich for me.
Yeah, I saw you making your sandwich. So
Man, it was rough, but yeah, I mean it was a good hunt. We were there for 6 days and didn't see an elk, didn't hear
oh
an elk, did nothing, man. We found sign. It was good. We, to the best of our ability, we're hunters, not knowing the area, right? But we
yeah,
we did what hunters would do, in my opinion. I think we hunted hard. We went 30-ish foot miles over the
yeah.
whole unit that we were in, over 5 or 6 days, and man, I was bugling every chance we could get. Nothing, cow calling, nothing. I mean, it was
Yeah.
crazy. Nothing.
What unit were you in?
85, the West Spanish Peaks.
What's the nearest town from there? Because I don't have all the units memorized.
Trinidad.
Oh, okay, okay,
So
yeah, yeah,
west of Trinidad, about 40 minutes
got it. Okay.
is where
Um,
we were at anyway. And then there was the actual Spanish Peaks, the ones that are freaking hella high, are
yeah.
another 45 or so from the unit we were hunting, or the area in Unit 85 we were hunting.
Um, and that's the hardest thing for me is I have a lot of people ask me on social media. They ask me about certain units and where they would go. And the best I can do 90% of the time is look at Onyx and look at the terrain.
Yeah.
But it's a learning experience. The area that I archery hunt for myself, which this year I didn't draw, but my wife did, and a
Cool.
couple of my buddies did. We went over there basically the week of muzzleloader to hunt archery.
Yeah.
And I did that just based off of the moon phase. I thought the rut would hit and it'd be game on and it would be a great week. And every year that I've ever been in there, we've seen elk. We've gotten close to elk. We've killed quite a few elk now. And this year I was anticipating very good odds for success. And we got up there on Saturday, set up camp, and Sunday morning, first thing we made it about a half a mile from camp, and we bumped some elk. And
Damn.
I bugled at them. I didn't even get to see them because they just went crashing through the timber. And so I bugled at them real quick, and I had one bull respond back to me. I was like, awesome. Like, he's
Yeah.
right there. We know they're here. And I didn't even need chasing them would have not paid off. But I was just like, they're here. Good. Let's keep going to where I want to go. And right then a bugle goes off behind me that just sounds awful. I'm like, that's a hunter. Like, there's another. And I told my two buddies that were with me, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's a hunter. But I bugled back to him. He bugled, and then he kept trying to talk to us. But I knew it was a hunter, so I was trying to get his attention to like come here. So I actually made my bugles more aggressive, hoping he would, get excited and hurry in.
Yeah.
He didn't, and we spotted him. We finally spotted him, and the wind was terrible for him. So I saw he started creeping around, and I was like, I'm not going to wait 45 minutes for him to get downwind through all that downfall. So we just went on up to where I was wanting to set up that morning anyways. And my buddies get set up, and I let one bugle out, and we got like the best, like guttural, deep bugle followed with chuckles, like big bull right above us on the hillside.
So jealous.
And yeah, and my two buddies that were with me, it was their first time. One of them, it was his first time ever hearing like a real elk bugle.
Mm-hmm.
And he's one of those guys that just being in the mountains, he's in heaven. Like he came from Kansas, and he sees every little bit that, you know, guys like me that have lived here can take for granted. And he was fired up. So I started talking to this bull, and I found out real quick that bull was not going to come down to us. He was staying up there. And now our wind wasn't right. And then all of a sudden I hear that awful bugle not far from us, but he had gone clear around us and was probably, I don't know, 600 yards through the timber. He starts trying to talk to this bull. So now there's two hunters talking to the same bull. And I was like, well, the wind's not right. This guy's probably going to screw it up. Let's just go quiet. And as soon as I stopped bugling, the big bull stopped. And that other guy kept bugling for a few minutes trying to get something fired up. Nothing happened. So after about 15 minutes of silence, I bugled once to the hunter, hoping maybe he'd come see us and we could talk. And sure enough, he came sneaking in. Like as soon as he came through he had an arrow knocked. He was ready to go.
He was here.
Yeah. Yeah. The funny part was my buddy Eric, the first time we were trying to get that guy's attention, he started clucking. He did some turkey calls, trying to get that guy to look at us.
Hit the single read.
Yeah, so he gets around to us and says, "Man, did you guys just hear all that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "There was a bull
It's
over
me.
here," and I was like, "That was me." And then I was like, "Were you just straight down from here an hour ago?" And he was like, "Yeah, I was talking to a bull down there." And I was like, "Oh, that was me too."
That was me.
And then out of nowhere, he goes, "Did you guys hear that turkey?" And Eric raised his hand. He was like, "Yeah, that was me."
Oh my God.
Anyways, it was that guy's last day hunting, and he's like, "They're just getting fired up. You guys are gonna have a great week." And super nice guy. We chatted with him for a while, and I was of the mindset like the first hour of daylight, we've already had all this happen, so I'm excited for the rest of the week. We don't need to push it. And that night, everything went quiet, and then it rained for 5 days, and nothing made a sound for 5 days. Yeah. The last 2 days, they got fired up again. My wife got a bull to come in. She was bugling. She had Brian with her that day, and he came into 100 yards. And not long after that, I had my dad, and I got him set up when we heard this bull coming. So I called him in, and he was about 40 yards from my dad, but my dad couldn't see him. And I was another 40 yards behind him with a decoy, and that the bull saw my decoy, and I was talking to him, and I thought, it's a done deal. He's just got to come to me. And right about then, the wind dropped straight at him, and he just walked away. So I went to my dad. We dropped down to his tracks. We followed him all like 200 yards, and there was another opening in the dark timber. And so from there, my dad got set up, and I started bugling again, and that bull came back. And this time, my dad got a good look at him. He was about 100 yards away and looked like he wanted to come across the opening, but I couldn't see him, and so he couldn't see me or my decoy. And after about 5 minutes of him bugling at me and talking to me, the wind changed again and went around the hillside this time. And that time he walked away again, and we knew we weren't going to get him close. So, but no arrows were thrown that week, but it was still exciting. Like, I enjoy talking to elk anyways. Just, it's fun.
Yeah, I wish I'd have had the opportunity. That sounds great. I mean, we pulled up, and you could tell me if this is hogwash, and in the back of my head, I know it is, but it makes a lot of sense. Okay, I'm convinced that CPW, when you buy your tag, they put some sort of like Axe body spray or something on there that like defers the bull. Like, okay, I bought an OTC either sex elk tag, probably just like yourself, right? And before he hands it to you, he goes under the counter and sprays some shit, and he's like, "Here, you can have it." And the elk know to stay away from that, and nothing else does. We pull into camp. The only reason I say that is we're first week of September. I go with one of my buddies who is at that Total Archery Challenge in Colorado with me. He had a mule deer tag for a unit in Pagosa. He was successful, got a doe. It was awesome, great hunt. Um, and we saw 2 mule deer in 5 days. One we could not pursue, and then one that he shot.
Okay.
The amount of elk that we were able to see and not shoot pissed me off.
Right.
And then 5 days later, I come home, spend some time with the wife and baby, turn back around for 6 or 7 days with David, got an elk tag. We pull into camp, and there are 6 mule deer in camp,
Yeah.
like shooters. We counted that weekend. We could have killed four. Not like, oh Josh, we saw some mule deer and we could have killed them. Like blah blah. I'm telling you, I would have pulled the trigger at any distance that these mule deer were at. 14 mule deer.
Yeah.
I could have
Yeah.
put in the freezer. And then we're sitting there. One evening, we got kind of set up in the brush or whatever, just in this kind of highway that we thought we saw some tracks on. Maybe they're coming to and from water, the whole story. And
Yeah.
right at where I could barely see my pins, like, yeah, I'm taking a shot if something walks through, but probably shouldn't, type of deal, And
Yeah.
a tom flies in 3 yards in front of me, walks right by me, like I could have touched him with a stick.
Yeah.
And just walked by me, no big deal. Didn't see a single elk. So I'm convinced CPW, they're like, oh, OTC, yeah, no problem. Let me go print it off. And then they hand it back to you. Like, you're not going to see anything, bud, but you'll see a bunch of mule deer. It was so
I'm
frustrating.
curious,
Man.
Russ. Will you see if that preference point manual is right there, please?
I'm
I'm going to
get
look at the preference point manual because I want to compare units. So Overbike Pagosa is known for its elk. If you can handle the well, actually it's elk and it's mule deer. So and the terrain, like that's to me, like I've gotten to where I'll be headed somewhere, typically across Colorado. And I'll just see something. I'll be like, oh, I want to hunt mule deer right here. Like this is, even if I don't see a single deer, the terrain to me looks like the place that I would want to hunt mule deer. And same thing with elk, and also pronghorn. It really depends. Every bit of terrain, I see the highlights of it and what I would want to look for. Go ahead.
Is there a specific elevation that you're looking for these animals?
No. And so there's an old theory. My dad believes in this theory, and I don't. And I know a few guys that do, and they call it, like especially with elk, they call it an elk band. And they believe that there is a certain elevation each week where the elk are centralized. And when you get into elk, you're going to know, and that's going to be centralized. And that's why, like on Facebook and the other, where there's hunting groups, you have guys that are saying, we got into elk and they were all at 11,500 to 12,000 feet this week. And that may be true on that specific mountain was where they saw the most, but that doesn't mean that that's where the elk are, in my opinion.
It just seemed like for mule deer anyway, the only mule deer that we saw were probably like 8,000 and below on both of the hunts I went this year. Now the area in Pagosa that we were 8,000 was like base, like we camped at 8, right? And that's where he shot his mule deer was like 8. But you can go up to, we were in 78, 77, 771 or whatever the group of that is. I think it's 78, 77, and 771. I don't know. And I think it went up. I think the peak of that mountain went up to like 12,500.
Yep.
13 maybe. It doesn't matter. 12,500, 13. And the guy I was with has hunted elk in that area too. And he's like, yeah, I've always seen him up on the mountainside, 10,000, 11,000 feet. And we always hunt mule deer down here at 7,000, 8,000 feet. So I was curious what kind of stock you put into that, but you answered my question.
Yeah. And with that, like anywhere you can find elk, you can find mule deer. Okay. But anywhere you can find mule deer, you won't necessarily find elk. And the numbers don't equate correctly. And it's weird because I'm trying to think how to explain this. So your low land and your private land always has mule deer year round. And then if you get above timberline, you will find mule deer above timberline. And just a good example was September 2nd, the opening day of the season. A friend of ours had a timberline mule deer tag. That's a rifle tag, good for the whole month of September, but you have to hunt above 10,000 feet. And he spent like 20 preference points
That's
on it.
weird.
So it's a special tag for velvet deer that you can hunt with a rifle. So that morning, the first morning, opening morning, we got up there, and at first light, we could see over 30 deer in the basin that we were in. And that wasn't counting the other basins that we could see. That was just the basin we were in. And he shot a nice mule deer. It's the only velvet buck I've posted this fall.
Yeah, I saw it.
Was shot.
Good buck.
Yeah, he was shot right around 12,000 feet, roughly. And the following week, when I left for my archery hunt, Danny had 2 muzzleloader hunters here, and they had multiple opportunities on deer at about 7,000 feet. But most of the terrain in between there, the heavy timber, the oak brush, and the national forest that's between the top of the mountain and the private land, the deer are there. They're just way harder to locate. And it's because they're so sneaky with the brush and other stuff like that. I still think there's plenty of deer up there. They're just way harder to locate than they are on the private, the lower stuff. And the elk, on the other hand, are easier to find, for me, are easier to find on that than they are when you're stuck to private. You know, having fence lines as your boundaries that are hard stops is a lot harder than having a ridge that is, you just have to make it to the other side of that ridge to see more huntable terrain on national forest.
Sure.
But real quick, what was the primary unit that you were hunting mule deer in?
We were in 77.
Okay.
Well,
So
I know 77, 78, and 771 are all the same. So 77.
okay. So for deer, I'm just going to look at the preference point manual because I'm curious. And I'm going to look at first rifle because that's always, second rifle because that's always the hardest draw. Well, or fourth rifle, but.
We'll go into that why.
So, fourth rifle for us is usually our hardest draw for mule deer because it is the closest you can be to hunting mule deer in the rut in Colorado, in the mountain range. Now, eastern Colorado's mule deer have different seasons. Like their late season starts December 1st, and usually that's right at the rut, catching the middle or end of it. By then, you usually have some broken off bucks, but you also have bucks that are very much in the rut and they're grouped up, and so their does are what give them away typically.
Gotcha.
But like right here, we'll look at fourth rifle. For a non-resident, for the rifle tag, that takes 5 preference points for unit 77. For antlered, actually, I can't even see the antlered on this page, but or the archery on this page. This is just the rifle page. But even second rifle, which should be the easiest draw, says 1 preference point. So at the same time, if we go to elk for that, because that's where you were seeing plenty of elk.
Yeah.
Let's look at their first rifle because that's the hardest to draw for elk. That's actually interesting. So 77 is 0 preference points, which is opposite of what I kind of anticipated. But your 77, 771 is all right on the edge of 76, which is that one of Colorado's trophy units that requires not the most preference points, but as a non-resident, it's probably going to take you close to 20 points to draw that.
I already got my bighorn sheep tag rolling. I'll get it when I'm 70, and you'll come with me, and it'll be great.
Yeah. And what is it? It's $100 per preference point now. So
no, it's is it 100? I don't know. Hell, dude, they just
for
charged
non-resident,
me.
it's
I don't.
$100 per preference point.
Then I paid $100.
Yeah, bighorn sheep, moose, and mountain goat. Or they changed that to $100 per preference point, $50 for a resident, which our whole system got flipped upside down 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Once upon a time, in order to even apply for a preference point, you had to pay for the cost of the tag, which meant for a resident, just an elk preference point was going to cost you like $45. For non-resident, you would have to pay the $600 something just for a preference point.
Wow.
And then about 7 years ago, they changed the system where application fees are $9.
Yeah.
So you can apply for anything you want for $9. And our ratios of how many people were applying for these tags just went through the roof. That's when people really started building preference points. But I understand why they did it. It's a money thing, is all it is. They're going to make more money $9 at a time than they would $700 at a time, and it costs them too much money to refund people that didn't draw. The processing of all that. But the $50 preference point fee for moose, bighorn sheep, and mountain goat, and then $100 for non-resident. That's because they don't have enough tags sold for that to really put much money towards conservation for those species specifically.
Got it.
And that's what that preference point cost goes to now, is literally to try to manage those species so we still have them in 20 years when you draw yours.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. I only put in, so I'm curious to know your opinion on this. I only put in for bighorn sheep. One, because it's on my list, just my personal list. But am I screwing up by not putting the other two in? Or do you think...
No. I don't think so.
You think I'm better off going somewhere else, another state, or Yukon maybe to get those two and then stay with the bighorn sheep in Colorado?
That's my opinion of it. Like I only put in for Rocky Mountain bighorn.
Yeah.
As a resident, I don't put in for moose, and because I can go to Canada or Alaska to hunt moose.
Right.
And same with mountain goats. There's plenty of places I can go hunt mountain goats that doesn't take me 20 years to do it.
Yeah.
And so I'm the same way. But
Good.
You got my wife on the other hand, that she's just expensive and she puts in for everything that she possibly can.
She just wants to get it, man. She wants to.
She's gonna have more hunts than I will in her lifetime, probably. So
that's all right. You'll probably still be there. You just won't be the one pulling the trigger.
Yeah, hopefully my son's big enough by the time she draws any of them that he can pack the moose out, and not me. So.
Yeah, right. You just get to sit back with a beer and say, "Hey, son, let me teach you something."
So here's a funny story that my wife thinks it's funny. My family thinks it's funny. Other people's wives may not think it's funny, but she was dead set after she hunted with me the first year. After she hunted with me the first year, she killed her first. Sorry, he's hungry. She killed her first bull at 400 yards, single shot with her 270 that her grandpa gave her. Like everything was perfect, and she packed that bull out on her back. We put the head and the cape on my pack frame. I gave it to her because she didn't have a pack frame yet, and she was adamant about carrying her rifle. Her total pack out on her first bull, the first trip was about 1,000 foot in elevation over 2 miles, and she was carrying like 102 pounds on top of her, and she weighs 115.
Hey, so virtual high five to your wife. That's
right.
Badass.
Yeah. So anyways, then the following year, I was booked up guiding. She wanted to go hunt elk by herself, and I was like, no, that's a bad idea, because what are you going to do if you get an elk down? And she told me, well, I'll drag it to a tree and I'll tie up a leg to quarter it and all this stuff. And I was like, that's not going to work. But we argued about it plenty. And the last day of the season, I took her to one of my spots. I was done guiding, so I took her to one of my spots. And the whole way in there, she was like, there's no elk sign. There's no elk in here, blah, blah, blah. We come around the corner, and there's a bull right there, like 80 yards. She sees it before I saw it. So she lets me know. She takes a shot. The bull runs out and goes down right in the middle of this meadow. It's like beautiful, but the only thing close to us is oak brush, and the oak brush is like 20 yards away. So I told her,
that's a long way.
Yeah, I was like, go drag your bull over to a tree and tie its leg out. And,
you would. And that's great.
So that didn't work out. So then she got her knives out and she got going to work on it. She wanted to do it, you know, it was part of it. But I took a video of her starting to cut it up, and my feet were kicked up, and I had a honey bun or something in my hand, and I was just relaxing, eating a snack while she was putting in work. And that was one of the first things I tried to put on TikTok, and they took it down real fast.
Big mistake.
Yeah. It was taken down immediately. But,
dude, they are the worst.
Yeah.
And then I see TikToks, like I'll just be scrolling and you see a TikTok of, you know, somebody shooting something, pick something with an arrow, because that's what my feed is filled with, is archery, right? And it's, you know, got 20,000 likes and 5,000 shares and 1 million views, and it's like a straight heart shot of this animal, blood everywhere, and I'm like, well, how is this okay? Like, where's the threshold here? Like, if this is okay, then everything I'm posting's got to be okay.
Yeah. It's like I've shown. I even tried. I had a deer that I guided on that I was really proud of, which he went 197. But the story that went with that mule deer was just
mule deer. Is that like? I mean, cool. That sounds good to me. Is that good?
Yeah, but I tried to post him, and it kept getting flagged, and so I literally took and blurred the entire animal except for the antlers, and I had the antlers, and I was trying to hoist him up. So it looked like just me holding antlers.
Yeah.
And it still got flagged. Like it. So I quit posting anything with hair or blood or guns or anything on TikTok for a long time.
Yep.
Lately, I've been sneaking a few in through like CapCut, where it's just a quick flash of you know, packing something out or whatever. Yeah. And they haven't hit me lately. And I no longer have any like warnings on TikTok that I'm going to be banned forever.
You discovered CapCut and became Michael Bay. It was like all these famous movies, right?
The CapCut stuff's fun and it's easy. Like
it's so easy. I enjoy it. I like the overlays sometimes of, you know, Jim Carrey or whatever, and they're kind of doing that. Mm-hmm. Those are fun, but I really enjoy because I get into a little bit of the cinematic performances, if you will, just from what I do, trying to make something look cool, like a movie trailer, and they have some good stuff in there.
Well, so prior to TikTok, like back when I was just on Facebook and that was kind of all I was doing, I always enjoyed memes, and so I started making hunting memes, like just for fun, like anything I could. And it's cool because like even now, like I have memes that are like 10 years old, and every year I still see them posted in hunting groups, like they're still circulating.
Awesome, dude.
And so like if you ever have, I used to have a watermark on them. If you ever come across a meme that has North American big game hunters on it, that was just a watermark that I came up with, and a Facebook group that I had. And you'll see, like randomly, it'll pop up one of my memes that I made, shared in another group that I wasn't even in, you know, back when I was making them. And so when I discovered CapCut, 2 months ago, I kind of started making a lot of memes. And it's bad because I'll get bored at night and I'll flip through and I'll find something and I'll think it's hilarious. But I've decided with CapCut, I sit on it for like 24 hours before I post it to TikTok.
Like an email?
I have to
email to a coworker
like, that you hate? Yeah. I have to decide which hunting aesthetic I want to piss off today. Like,
yeah, right?
And how mad I want to make them. So I have like 20 that I just don't think I'll ever actually post, but I might send them to friends.
Yeah, shoot them over. I'd love to see them.
Yeah, right. Some of them were really, like, I thought they were really funny when I first made them, and then when I rewatch them, they're not as funny to me.
Yeah, I do that a lot with drafts that I've got saved on various social platforms, like making something and it's not very good or whatever, trying to do something like that. But I've become less and less concerned about what people think, and more concerned about doing what I want to do. As my social media career, if you will. I mean, it sounds bold, but goes on and stuff. But I don't know, man. You're gonna piss everybody off regardless of what you post, I've learned. So I might as well just post what I want to and what I think is relevant, funny, or helpful. And if you don't like it, then peace. Yeah.
Right. And there's the social media stuff, especially the more I pay attention to it, because for a long time I would just I would post a video, close the app, not pay attention to it, come back, respond to comments. But I would never actually watch, like I'd never scroll through reels. Like I'd never watch other people's stuff.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, there was a couple people that I met at TAC when I met you. And there's one guy specifically that just his personality, a lot of the things that he posts, I'm not a fan of. Like I don't want to be associated. And what I've noticed 4 or 5 times now is somebody will ask me a question and I will address it. And 2 days later, his stuff comes up recommended, even though I don't follow him. It comes up because it's in the hunting community.
Yep.
And it's literally like a carbon copy of what I said, but he's way more offensive in his delivery. And it's like, I can, I don't know how PG we need to be. I can
say whatever you want. Say whatever you want.
Like I could jump on with my, 2008 Marine Corps mentality and absolutely rip somebody apart.
Yeah.
But that's not at all like what I want to put out there. Like that's not the stuff I want to put out there.
Yeah.
And when I see people that are taking something that can be dealt with professionally and be a good representation of the hunting community and just absolutely ruin it, like I just don't like that kind of a ambassador for hunting. And whether they know it or not, if they have 2,000 followers or they have 400,000 followers, they're representing the hunting community as a whole.
Yeah.
And you've seen it. I think you sent me a message on how I dealt with one bullshit comment, and I do my best to be like, I'm not going to say neutral. I stand on whatever I believe in.
Oh, for sure.
But I can have a debate and a conversation with somebody without going to that, oh, you stupid liberal, or oh, you're a stupid, like the normal like name calling bullshit cop out stuff when you run out of good discussion.
Yeah, I'm all about it, and you do a great job of that, and of like responding to that. I meant every word whenever I texted you that, separately from TikTok, because I was like, dude, I don't know how you do it. Like everything you said, I was thinking, but added so many more like F-bombs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and I'm just like, I don't know how you can. I just try to stay away from it because I have no filter for people who want to make ignorant comments.
Yeah.
I just don't, man. I don't ever plan to have a filter. I don't care to have a filter. Take me for what it is. Take me for who I am. If you don't like it, don't follow, don't watch. I don't care. But there's no way that I could sit there and do what you do and be PC about it. Like, I agree with everything you say. I just say it in a lot different way. You know what I mean? And it's just one of those things that I have no problem debating different points of views. I think that's what makes this country great. To touch on it just for a second, is everybody's different, but at the end of the day, you can sit there and have an adult conversation with somebody and then shake their hand and go get a beer. Like I'm a firm believer in that. And what people don't do in this country is the latter. They sit there and yell at each other, think they're right, and then never talk to each other again, which I hate. Like, I don't know how many fights I've gotten into with my hunting buddies that I'm definitely right and they're definitely wrong, right? And then afterward we pour whiskey and go to bed. Like I don't, it is what it is, and I can't get over the ignorant people that make these comments that know nothing about the industry, know nothing about the sport, know nothing about what I do as an archery, and then they want to be like, oh, you're this is stupid, you're doing it wrong, and I'm just like, I just want to like pound a table and then respond. I can't stand it. I just can't.
Like, I've had a ton of comments targeted at me where I'm like, the first thing that comes to mind is usually not what I need to respond with. So like, but like at the same time, I still think about, well, what can I do here to either flip this and point out something that's valid.
Yeah.
That'll either make them second guess or it'll make their argument irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because I like the general like speech and debate kind of narration of something. But then you also have the guys that are just jackasses, you're not going to change their mind.
I know.
And a lot of people I look at, I'm like, I'm not going to change that guy's mind, so I'm not even going to respond to it. But I don't know. It was before you and I met. There was I don't even know if I could find the video. It's so far back now, but there was a guy named Boobs42069. That was his username.
I can only imagine the asinine comments.
Yeah. And so we were talking about, there was some video where I offended a bunch of people, and it did great things for my social media because people followed me. And all I really said was that the 30-06 is your grandpa's rifle. That was all I really said.
Yeah.
I didn't say it was a bad cartridge. I didn't say anything negative. I just said, I don't see them very often. Nobody hunts with them in my camps. Like, I don't think I've ever had anybody show up to a guided hunt with a 30-06.
And what the TikTok community heard was Josh thinks 30-06s are trash, and you shouldn't hunt with them.
Exactly. and so then that rolled into cartridges, and then it rolled into what animal you're actually hunting, and all of the ballistic stuff that goes with it. And so I just said, at one point I said, this is the projectile that I recommend. This is the projectile that I use, and I've seen very high success rates with it. If you make impact with an animal, it does damage. And I had some guy come on. Well, some guy was Boobs42069.
Some guy.
He's like, yeah. And he's like, that's why I hate guides. They all think that they're experts and blah, blah. And he just went on some rant. But he called me a bunch of names in the process. And so I responded to his video. Yeah. So I responded to his video, and I said, I never ever claimed I was an expert, but I do this for a living, and I see trends. And if I notice a trend in something, whether it's a trend of it being successful or a trend of it not being successful, then I'm gonna go off of that information, that real life information that I see. I'm not gonna Google it. I'm not gonna look at other stuff if I've seen a trend in something.
Yeah.
And so the analogy I gave was, I said, so if Boobs420 is my neighbor, and I see his wife go across the street to another neighbor, and when she leaves his house, she's a little bit bow-legged. If I see it one time, I'm going to assume that something happened, but it may not be a big deal. But if I see her repeatedly go to the neighbor's house, and every time she comes back, she's walking a little bit different, then I'm going to see a trend there, and I'm going to base an opinion off of that trend. And he went absolutely ballistic in my comments about saying that I thought that I was claiming his wife was a whore and all this other stuff. And I said, see, and that's what happens when you jump to conclusions, because for all I know, that other neighbor could be a physical trainer, and I only see her when she goes over on leg day. But you assume that she was having an affair. And he finally deleted all of his comments and unfollowed me.
I love it. The fact that he gave you a follow in the first place is amazing.
Yeah. But I also told him at that point, I kind of made a blanket statement that if you have a username like Boobs42069, I'm not going to take most of your comments serious to begin with.
Yeah.
But
that's wild. Yeah, the social.
So when is your next trip for elk? When are you going to hunt elk for yourself?
Next September. That's all I got.
Do you have a plan?
Nope. Different than what I did last time.
Call me in February.
I will.
Yeah. Let's talk about it in February, and I'll try to work something out. I've gotten to the point where I've run into this dilemma of, for so many years I was guiding that I didn't get to really hunt for myself.
Yeah.
And the year my wife and I started dating, I was like, I'm going to burn all my points. I'm going to go on the hunts I want to go on. And I did. I mean, I went elk archery, followed that up with a pronghorn rifle hunt, and I killed a nice buck. Actually,
I can see the shadow.
Yeah.
Oh, I can see. Well, it's different on my like what I'm gonna put on YouTube, but I can see it on the little team. Yeah. That's a good buck. That bottom one, dang.
And so he's wide, but he's got great mass. Ooh. His cutters are pretty high. He's got the really good curls on him.
That's awesome.
So anyways, at the same time, my wife killed the one above it day after.
That one's pretty tall to me. I don't know much about pronghorn, but I feel like that one's pretty tall.
Yeah. So what's funny is hers, they don't score width with pronghorn.
Okay.
Hers scores 1 inch bigger than mine does.
No.
Yep. And hers broke 80 inches. Mine was like a half inch short of 80 inches.
Okay, so what would be considered a gold medal pronghorn, if you will? I'll word it like that. You know what I mean?
If you exceed 80 inches, 80
Right.
inches is like the equivalent to a 200-inch mule deer or a 300-inch bull. That's what hits book.
So she got you beat by a half inch.
Yeah. Well, by I think 1 inch total, so half inch each
That's
side.
crazy.
So,
No, yeah,
but
I don't have any plans for the rest of this year to go elk hunting. Man, I ever since I took this venture into archery, I haven't even pulled my 270 out of the safe.
right.
For better or for worse, I'm probably making a mistake because I could probably hunt other things during rifle season, but I continuously hunt things during rifle season with archery, but it's just my whole world. So,
Right.
yeah, no more plans since archery season is now over. How long does elk season run for rifle?
So it depends on the season. So like first rifle is 5 days, second rifle is 9 days, third rifle is 7 days, fourth rifle is 5 days.
And that's through the end of like November, or?
So it's first rifle is usually the second Saturday of October.
Okay.
And that runs for 5 days. So that it'll end on Wednesday, and then there's like a week and a half break before second rifle starts. Second rifle usually lands like very end of October, first week of November. And then there's a week break after that, and then third rifle. And fourth rifle, I don't actually remember if fourth rifle kicks off immediately after third or if there's a break in between. They used to be bunched up. Like it was tight guiding because you like literally first, second, third rifle, we could hunt, bring clients down, pick up new clients, go back up the next day and be hunting again.
Gotcha.
And now they have a week break in between each season where it like that. It gives the animals a break. It gives the forest a break. It gives everybody a break. The only downside is it interferes with our eastern Colorado hunts because our second rifle now usually interferes with Eastern Plains first rifle because that runs in October. And then our fourth rifle ends, and literally the very next day usually is when the December season starts for Eastern Plains mule deer or plains deer. And that December 1st to the 15th is good for that. We usually guide the first 5 days of it. It keeps me busy, but like I think I want to get you here in September. That's what we need to try to plan. Do you have any elk points? Any elk preference points? One, are you wanting to build more?
I am open to suggestions, to be 100% honest with you. I mean,
So,
the end game is to, the PC answer would be to just kill an elk because I've never killed an elk before, right?
right.
But the end game as far as preference points go would be I want to kill a bull that I can be proud of, whether that's a skate by 4x4 or a massive 6x6 you see in Cabela's. I really don't have a threshold there. I'm more of a enjoy the hunt kind of person. I savor the meat more than the horns, and to me it's a story more so than, hey, look at this big ass bull I've got on the wall. Is that cool? Do I want it? Everybody wants it. I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't. But if I go with you and we spend 6 days busting our ass to try to get on a bull, and we get this barely legal 4x4 bull, and I throw an arrow through it at 63 yards, that's a way cooler story than me sitting at 20 yards over a water hole and a big bull walks in.
Right.
So I'm a story person.
And I'm the same way.
So there's my answer. Whether that means anything to you for preference points, I don't know, but that's my answer.
So what we'll talk. We need to. I don't think there will be any problem with it, but we'll communicate in February.
Yeah.
March we'll decide. You'll apply for whatever we discuss, and I'll have my next fall planned out by then.
Yeah.
So I always take 1 week of archery, and that's my dad's hunt. Like there was quite a few years when I was guiding where it wasn't that wasn't a priority. It was just that for some reason I felt like I needed to work for the outfitter as much as the outfitter wanted me to. And it was like I was trying to prove myself that I was going to be a good employee and a loyal employee, and I was going to bust ass and be a good guide.
Yeah.
Well, I got so tired of that because honestly, the outfitters I was working for didn't take very good care of me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the year I met my wife, going back to it, that was the year I said, I'm going to apply for these seasons. If I draw, then I'm gone. I'm not going to guide. I'm not going to do anything else those seasons except for hunt for myself. And I did, and I came home with a 185-inch mule deer, right at almost 80 inches pronghorn, and I had a blast with my elk hunt. And since then, I've taken 2 weeks a year, one during archery season and one during one of the rifle seasons that are my hunts.
Yeah. The
problem is my hunts have turned into my friends' hunts.
Yeah.
So I've taken, like the last time I hunted archery, I didn't plan it correctly. I took my dad with me. It was just the two of us. Nobody else showed up that week. The year before that, I invited a friend that is an incredible archer. He is super meticulous, a great archer. When it came to hunting, it was a little bit different. I thought he was going to show up and I was going to give him a crash course and we were going to kill an elk and then I was going to hunt myself. And it turned into a week of me with him nonstop trying to, and man, we had the opportunities like 9 bulls under 100 yards in 5 days. And like, I'm not going to say there were like great shot opportunities necessarily, but like they were there. They were right there. And he didn't see a single elk that was under 100 yards. And we had, it's hard to describe. It's like some people have the right eye for it.
Yeah.
I can describe it with like I can be damn near anywhere and notice a shed on the ground. Yeah. It'll catch my eye and I'll find a shed. My wife doesn't see that. She doesn't see sheds and she hates me for it. And she gets mad that when we go shed hunting, I can pick out a shed anywhere. And she has never found a shed on her own naturally. Yeah. But when it comes to identifying hair and separating like hair from brush or antler from tree branch and so on and so forth, she does great with that when it's a live animal. I do great with that when it's a live animal. My buddy that was with us did not. He couldn't separate the two. Yeah. Things that I was shocked he couldn't see. We had a bull at 30 yards that was just thrashing a tree. And I could see his antlers coming around each side of the tree and just going nuts on it. He never saw that bull. And he was right beside me. And it's like he heard it. He knew there was something there, but he couldn't see it. And anyways, sorry, getting into a really long story short, what that's adapted to is I basically have 2 camps a year now. One of them is an archery camp and one of them is a rifle camp that are no money changes hands. It's my family and my friends. Yeah. And this year, the way it worked out, my friends all drew their archery tags. I didn't. So my best friend that has been my hunting buddy since 2011, almost every year we've hunted elk together. He's bringing his son 3rd rifle. I'm going to hunt for myself 3rd rifle. And then I have another guy from Texas that initially reached out to me years ago on Facebook about a guided hunt. And I kind of just gave him direction. Yeah. And stories are going to like stack up and I'm trying not to make it too long. You could. He reached out to me on Facebook. He had been hunting in Colorado for, I think, 6 or 7 years. He had never killed an elk. And he reached out to me on Facebook and he said, I want to hire a guide next year if this year doesn't pan out, and I like your stuff. I like your social media stuff. I said, well, give me a call. Let's talk on the phone. So I never want to try to sell somebody on a guided hunt if they want to do it on their own and are capable of doing it on their own.
Yeah.
So I said, well, what do you, how old are you? Well, he's my age. So when we met, he was 31, 32. And I said, okay, so what are you doing? Are you hiking? What kind of shape are you in? He's like, well, I'm in pretty good shape. And I was like, well, how much ground do you typically cover? And he's like, I'll do 100 miles in a 9-day hunt. I was like, well, then you're clearly in good shape if you can handle that.
Damn, that's pretty good, I feel like.
Yeah. And I was like, so what else are you doing? And he's like, well, I bring my horses and I usually pack in. I pack in, 4 to 6 hours into this one area, and we're just not seeing elk. I'm like, one, if you're bringing horses from Texas and you're going into the mountains and you're coming back and all your horses are alive and so are you, you're doing something right. Like you have all the capability to kill an elk. My opinion was, I think that you're not doing very well in your choice of location. So it was one of the first people that I ever said, look at these units. I said, I don't know any of the other units, but these are the units I do know. Look at them on Onyx and tell me what you think. Find a spot and I'll tell you what I know about it. And he sent me a waypoint that was no shit, exactly where one of my favorite camps, like outfitted camps, is. And I knew I wasn't guiding that year, so I just told him, I said, if you camp there, I would bet money there's going to be an outfitter already with a camp set up when you ride in. But these are some other options not far from there.
Yeah.
And he went up. He did it on his own. Him and a buddy went up. They brought their own horses from Texas. They actually ran into my dad on the same trail because my dad was packing for that outfitter. And he killed his first bull. So since then, he's done it on his own until last year. And last year was the first year that I've actually hunted with him. And he brought his son. His son's 9. And they had a blast. We saw some elk, but it just wasn't in the cards. So this year, he's going to come back and hunt with my third rifle. And my buddy Casey is bringing his son, who's going to turn 18 this November. And Casey's like my best friend when it comes to hunting and pretty much anything else in life. But I already told both of them, I was like, this is my year. First time in 5 years, I'm going to hunt elk strictly for myself.
Yeah.
But to add even more to it, my wife and I have a really good friend from New York. 5 years ago, she was a blue-haired liberal that just absolutely hated anything right-wing whatsoever. And we've been working on her. So last year she took yeah.
I love that. We've been working on it.
Yeah. So last year she took her hunter's education, which was like a huge fucking step.
Yeah, I was about to say.
She's never shot a firearm in her life, except for whatever New York's hunter's education requirements were. Oh, my wife says they didn't have her shoot in New York.
Yeah, Texas doesn't require it. It's like a 3-hour online course, and they're like, yeah, you're good.
Well, and in Colorado, they do require it.
Really?
We do watch, because I'm a volunteer hunter's education instructor.
Yeah.
And all they have to do is put 10 rounds through a bolt action 22. And it doesn't even matter if they hit paper. It's about operating the bolt, the safety, and the trigger is all it is.
I could get on board with that.
Right. It's simple. It's not about marksmanship. It's just about operating.
You're not going to kill somebody. That's the most important.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm with you.
So anyways, Maggie, our friend, our New Yorker, purple hair. Her hair used to be purple. So this last year, she got into fishing after doing hunter's education. She started fishing on her own. She's got a full setup of Blaze Pink camo, because that's legal in Colorado now. She's going to show up and she's going to go on that hunt, third rifle. She's not hunting this year. And that was like kind of my stipulation, was she's never even shot a firearm. So when she gets out here, we're going to take her to the range. We're going to go through a variety of rifles, get her started with the basics.
Yeah.
She's going to practice, jump on a hunt, and then hopefully next year she'll come back and actually hunt something with us. We haven't decided what species or season or anything yet.
Well, just buy an elk tag and you'll see mule deer and then kill a mule deer. That's how it works.
There you go. So yeah. So we'll see how it goes, but so this year I will be hunting for myself, but I'm gonna have
Good.
my wife will be there to spot for me, and then we'll have Maggie, the New Yorker, that's going to be in her first crash course of elk hunting in Colorado. So
That's awesome. Yeah. No, I'd love to, man. Whether that's through the guide service that you're with, or just hanging out with you. Like I said, my friends make fun of me because I told you I was a story person when it comes to what I consider a trophy, and that's 100% true. There's no lie in that. But I'm also a process person. Like, I enjoy what happens after the arrow leaves the bow more than anything before.
Yep.
So, like, we go on this big hunt every year. It's the second weekend in November, and we go to this whitetail outfitter down in South Texas, and it's a pay-to-play situation.
Yep.
And dude, the deer are ridiculous down there. If you ever feel like taking a week off, please come down. I'd love to take you. You would have a blast. It is nothing like hunting. It is Cadillac driven to the blind deer. I mean, it's a completely different experience, but is an experience worth having, in my opinion. I think it's crazy. But I enjoy the deer coming in. I enjoy flinging the arrow, but it's I'm going to sit in this blind 20 minutes after I've released the arrow with my knees shaking.
Yeah.
And then getting to find the arrow, decipher what type of blood it is, find a blood trail, track the animal. I mean, you know the steps after that. I don't need to sit here and preach to you, but it's that part after that I love the most. So even if it was something where it's like, hey, man, I don't have a tag for that area, and you drew a archery tag for some badass unit, call me. I'll be there. I'll help.
Yeah.
I'll come with you. It's an educational purpose for me. I think it's awesome. When I went on the mule deer hunt with my buddy, I didn't even bring a bow. I brought a camera. I filmed it. I got a video coming out hopefully at the end of the week of that mule deer hunt. It's going to be awesome on YouTube. And but yeah, I think it's just the process, man. That's what it's all about.
So like most new people that I meet outside of hunting,
Yeah.
everybody assumes that I don't like them. I've heard that in my entire life, that because I'm for the most part I'm an introvert. I don't communicate well with people.
Yeah.
Social media is really easy for me, especially when I'm talking about hunting. But you're never going to see me jump on and talk about politics or anything else that I'm not
Sure.
100% invested in, that I don't have all the knowledge to talk about.
Sure.
Hunting, I think I have enough of a background and real life experience that I'm confident in my opinions.
Yeah.
But when it comes to my friends give me a hard time about my stories, like nonstop, because we can be having a conversation. I'll start to tell a story, it'll get interrupted, shit'll happen, whatever the case may be, and we end up 20 minutes later, I can pick up and I'll be, anyways, so we were here and this is what we were doing, and I'll pick up that. Yeah. And the outfitter I work with is one of my best friends. I've known him. He remembers me when I was so little that I don't remember him. Our families have always known each other. Yeah, and our families have always known each other. And he's 5 years older than I am, but that's one of the things that he has always given me a hard time about. But in an aspect, I think it's like, this may be a weird thought process, but it's one of those things I imagine my friends that outlive me will talk about at my funeral.
Yeah, right.
I like stories. Like I've always been that way. I'm pretty quiet, but if you get me talking about especially hunting stories or Marine Corps stories, I will go on tangents and just talk forever.
I love it.
And
it just fuels passion. That's all it is, man. I mean, it's just,
right.
You could sit there and talk somebody's ear off, but if you wanted to have a conversation about board games, I'm sure this podcast would have ended about, I don't know, an hour and 36 minutes ago, which is 30
right.
seconds longer than we've been going. It's just when you're passionate about something, you let it rip, man.
Exactly. And that's there's so many things that like I was concerned about, because this is the first podcast that I've jumped on.
Yeah.
I have two other guys that want to talk to me about or want me to come on their podcast, and they're not people that I form much of a connection with for the most part.
Sure.
One of them I've talked to a lot, and he doesn't have. I'm trying to think how to word this correctly. He has an incredible amount of knowledge, and when I talk to him, I pick up so much. But when I look at his social media stuff, it's not quite as strong. Like it doesn't translate in a 3-minute video versus having a conversation on the phone, which is pretty normal.
Yeah.
But I picked his brain about random things quite a bit now, and I met him through social media, and I'm excited about moving forward with being able to have him as a resource, primarily because, like, even this last year, I don't know it all, or this last month, I don't know it all. And when I was calling the bulls and I could get them to come, but I could call them from a half a mile away or further, and they would stop at 60 to 100 yards. And I've had that in the past, and I figured out ways around that worked for this range that I guide in. But where I hunt is 3.5 hours away, and I was noticing that the elk behavior is just slightly different, and they don't respond to my calling and my tricks and all the things that I do quite the same way. And there's exceptions, but this year was probably the most obvious sign that I have some lack in my calling, that I couldn't understand why those bulls wouldn't finish and seal the deal and close that distance. And so I called him and asked him
Close
about
it closer than 60 yards?
No. So that's the thing, is they would stop. They would stop anywhere between, in reality, probably 80 to 100 yards, or like just the example of like my dad and I. Like, I know the wind had play in that, but there was a moment, there was probably about 30 seconds before the wind that bull should have seen my decoy, heard the aggression in my bugle, heard everything that I was doing, and at least come to check me out. He should have come to find the bull that he was looking to fight, because he came over well over a half a mile from my first bugle to him.
Wow.
And he closed that distance in 3 to 4 minutes. Like, his first bugle was so far away. I was above timberline, or right at timberline, and he was way down below me, a long ways off. And when I started calling to him, he was very responsive for the first minute. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, he was less than 200 yards, and then less than 100 yards. And then I got eyes on him at 80 yards. And typically, I would get more aggressive with my calling. I would cut him off. I would interrupt him, and I would almost bark at him. But that, combined with a decoy, a cow decoy right there that he could see, he should have closed distance, in my opinion. If that had been, I think, on this side of the mountain range where I'm used to guiding, I think he would have hammered it. But for some reason, he held up, and that just perplexed me, that I didn't understand what I was doing wrong that held him up before the wind changed. And then, anyways, really long story short, that was why I called the guy, and I was like, hey, this is a situation I just ran into. What am I doing wrong? Like, what happened? And the answer he gave me was pretty simple. Basically, it's one, there's a few calls he said that I could try in the future that are things that I've never practiced before because I've never needed to. And on the flip side of that, sometimes the elk are just not in it. They need verification of what they're going to fight before they get to it. It wasn't a monster bull that had all the confidence in the world. To me, it looked like probably borderline 6x6. I never got a side profile of him. I only saw him looking head on at me. His size was about right, that I would imagine he's a 5x5 pushing 6x6, roughly 4 years old. And I would assume he would have all that teenage testosterone that would make him want to come fight me. And that was why I was so confused why he didn't commit. Sorry, I'm going on like a bunch of tangents, and I'm rethinking everything in my head.
I'm loving it.
Why that hunt failed, but
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. No, that's great. I think it's fantastic when you have people that you can call to talk about stuff like that with, you know? I can't stand it. It's one of my biggest pet peeves in life is when I'm talking to somebody in an industry. I don't know, I'm going to use the discount tire, for example, or a tire shop, too, for example, right?
Yeah.
You go to the tire shop, and I know a little bit about tires and cars and what I should buy, but I go in and was like, hey, I need this, and that in a tire or whatever in my car. What are your recommendations? And the salesperson gives me some bullshit answer because he wants to make the sale, when I would rather him just say, I don't know, man. I'm going to find out for you, though, and we're going to get you set up with the right tire.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's my biggest pet peeve in life when people just sit there and BS you because they want to get something out of you. And I'm the same way. I just launched Archery Pro Shop here at this location. Going through a bunch of renovations right now. And that's what I tell my customers. The feedback from my local community has been great coming in. I had a guy come over this morning. He's a new archer. He said, hey, what do you think about this? And I was like, honestly, I don't have a clue, but I'm going to take your number down. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to call you before the end of the week, and I'm going to give you an answer.
Yep.
And people respect that more, man. Like when you go through your stuff and they're like, I don't know, but I have somebody to talk to. Like you would be that guy for me when it's like, man, I'm going elk hunting. I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, hell, I should have picked up the phone this year. Clearly, I didn't. That was my mistake. And it's something that's like, I don't know enough about elk, but if you were to call me and ask me something about hunting whitetail in Texas, I would have to believe that I may have more information on that than you because you don't live here. Right? Use your resources. That's what friends are for. That's what, I'm supposed to pick up the phone and talk to you for 2 hours about elk so that way I'm successful because you want me to be successful. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents on the whole matter. I think it's a great hunting community when you can get people like that together and really want to see people just be successful regardless of whether you're there, whether you're the one pulling the trigger, or whether you're the one that's going to help them or be the one on the Facebook page or the Instagram post. You might be in the background, but trust me, that guy that's holding up that elk, that bull, knows that you're the reason that he's there if he's worth a damn.
Right.
Right.
So. Well, and back to like the being able to admit that you don't know something is such a major step. And it's not just, to me, I think it has so much correlation. 2 things when it comes to especially hunting that's hard for men more than women. And for men, it's really hard to admit that you don't know something. And it's really hard to go home empty-handed for a lot of men. And that's what I've seen.
I can second the latter. I don't have a problem with the first one. I can set my ego aside, but I hate going home empty-handed.
Right. And I've seen guys that, they have that saying, don't shoot something on the last day that you wouldn't shoot on the first day type of thing. And I've seen a lot of guys that totally contradict that. I mean, heavily, where the last day they just decide they're going to shoot the first thing that's legal that they've already passed on throughout the rest of the week.
Yeah.
And I will never, ever, ever tell a client to pass on a legal animal. And that's the oddities with a lot of, it depends on the outfitter you're working for, the goals that they have, the marketing that they want to do, so on and so forth. We don't have a trophy idea of we want to be this grand place to go to slaughter big animals.
Yeah.
Because it's not a guarantee, and it's nothing I can promise. And that'd be the thing with, in general, like a guy, like if you come hunting with me, same thing I tell people that call me about their elk hunts. Yes, we have a high success rate. Yes, we have good opportunities, but last year we were over 100% on shot opportunity. And the reason why I say over 100% is we had people like the individual that shot or that had an opportunity at 400 yards, 2 opportunities at 200 yards, and 1 opportunity at 100 yards. He never pulled the trigger. But I'm sorry, but if I put a bull elk broadside at 100 yards in front of you, I consider that a success.
Dude,
with a rifle.
I'd pull the string with an arrow. I don't need a rifle. I'll take that.
Right,
If
exactly.
we worked our asses off for 6 days and you gave me a bull at
Right.
100 yards, Josh, I'm pulling a string.
Yeah. And that's the thing is uh, anyways, that last year was the best year that we have ever had for elk, working with the outfit that I work with now and the laces that we have. But that is not the norm. And there's certain things that played into last year that made the elk be in our back, like literally in our backyard. Like we had elk anywhere we wanted them to be.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily the norm. Like our pride is mule deer. We have a good opportunity on, for the most part, for the general rifle seasons, we're going to have 160 and 180 inch mule deer. And then when we go to Eastern Colorado, which is kind of our special trophy hunt, you're looking at 190. The biggest deer that we've taken was a 210 gross over there. And then also, we also have whitetail opportunities over there where you're looking at 150s, 160s whitetail.
Yeah.
Which for Colorado is exceptional. That's it's great.
A 150, 160 whitetail is good.
Yeah. Right. In that area of Colorado. But
got it.
But what I run into is a thought process that came to me when I was in the Marine Corps. When I was in the Marine Corps, I loved training. I loved teaching my Marines something. It didn't matter what it was. If I had the opportunity to better them, to better prepare them, I was going to throw it out. Like I was studying random survival tips, like how to rappel without a harness, how to do anything that might come in handy on a deployment.
Yeah.
If I had 15 minutes where I could throw out some random information and we had downtime, I was going to do it. And I had a guy that kind of took me in as a mentor that was one of my higher ups that said, you know, rule number one is when you're kicking a class, when you're talking to people and they ask you a question that you don't have an answer to, what do you do? And I said, well, for the most part, I have the answers. And he said, but what if you don't? I said, well, I don't know. I don't know what to do. And he said, what you say is, I don't know, but I will find out. And then you actually have to follow through with that and you have to find out. And that's one of the best advices, like the best advice in life that I've ever been given, I think, is it doesn't matter if I'm doing, my normal job, which is metal fabrication and steel structure buildings, or if it's guiding, it doesn't matter what kind of hunt it is. And then it translates over to TikTok as well, where if somebody asks me a specific question and I don't have the answer, I'm not going to bullshit my way through it. I'm going to explain. I'm just going to say, I don't know, but I will find out. Or I don't know, but this is where you could probably find out. Because there's certain questions that I'm asked that in a way are not worth it for me to go do the legwork to find out the answer to that specific question. But for the most part, the humility in being able to just say, I don't know, and be open about that is something that a lot of men have problems with and they have a hard time doing. And that's what's gained, honestly, it's gained a lot of traction on social media is when someone asks me a question that I don't have an answer to, but I think it's a good question. Just like super short, simple example that yesterday I talked about the 6 a.m. outdoors, some of the gear that they have sent me and that I used.
Yeah, I saw
and
that.
Somebody asked, right. So their multi-cloth, their tarp that I used that saved our ass for a day of being soaked in the rain. Somebody just asked me, how do you wash it? And the guy that I talked to is another veteran that's deployed. And he said, the multi-cloth is designed to be a windscreen, rain screen, sunscreen, but also primarily it's something that you can put your meat on. As you're quartering an animal by yourself, you can throw it on there to keep it clean. And so he said, well, he's like, what did you use on deployments whenever you had blood on gear? And I was like, well, hydrogen peroxide. Usually you put that on any clothing that you had. If you throw hydrogen peroxide on it, it's going to wash it away. And he said he does the exact same thing. So rather than, I was looking on the website to see what their cleaning instructions were and stuff like that. So I had the right answer for the guy. And then the guy from 6 a.m. Outdoors called me back and he told me, this is what I do and this is how I do it. And so when I made the response to that comment, I said, I had to call and ask and admit that I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
But
it makes you human to people.
Yeah. And it's gone a long way with just trying to be as transparent as possible, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think when you go back and you say a lot of men have a problem with that, I totally agree with you. But I think it needs to be a shift in mindset almost. Like I've been there before. I'm sure you've been there before, not wanting to say you don't know. You're a guy. I mean, we were younger one day and we wanted to know everything. You know, I'm speaking for myself. I'm just assuming for yourself. But it was always this mindset, well, if I don't know the answer to this, then I'm not a real man, I'm a bitch, right? Like,
Right.
you know, that's how people perceive me. When in reality, if we could shift the mindset from admitting you don't know to find the answer, it helps you personally. Who cares what you look like to other people? It helps you personally in the long run. If I can sit there and say, you know, I don't know, but I'm going to call Josh. I bet he knows. And then you and I have a half-hour conversation where you answered my question in the first 1 minute, but then you and I get to spend 29 minutes talking about God knows what and hunting. That relationship is invaluable because you learn something along the way and it makes you a better man. So it actually helps you to become a better man if you don't know the answer and you're willing to seek it out because you have gained more knowledge, in my opinion.
Right. Right. And there's,
So,
I feel like an old man when I start talking about some other aspects of like social media.
you got a kid now, you know, you're old. And...
So there was this guy, and it really bothered me that I didn't tag him, and I still don't regret not tagging him. So recently I had, I guess it would have been roughly in August or something like that. Some guy on TikTok, he makes this video, and it's him being a fucking bro, I guess is the best way I could put it.
We call them, in my line of work, we call them Chads.
Okay, so guaranteed Chad. But he's
sorry if you know a Chad and he's a good friend, but that's right. What I call him.
No, so this, unfortunately, like he's a loud and proud archery dude on TikTok. And anyways, he's standing out front of his house, and there's two fawns, whitetail fawns.
Dude, I saw this video.
Right.
My response to this video has been sitting in my drafts because I can't think of a Josh Lovelace answer to it because my response is like, this piece of shit, you know? Right. It's been sitting there for a month.
If you want to see me, like, more than any other video on TikTok, actually kind of lose composure, which I don't.
God,
you've seen me, but it's on his video. And the thing was, is I didn't tag him. I didn't say his name, nothing, because some jack, you know, there's a 2% that's going to see my video bashing him and go over there and hit like just because. But yeah. Anyways, just for the guys listening, this guy says, see those two fawns? If I get X amount of likes, I'm going to stick an arrow through Bambi. I'm going to shoot baby deer for likes on social media.
Yeah.
And that just like,
dude, it clicked me. I need to privately screen record my response and just send it to you that I haven't posted so you can see it, because that dude elevated me hard.
So I'm at a point where like I have him and I have another that one individual and one other guy, and this one other guy actually interacts with my posts, and he tries to get my, like, I'm trying to think how to word this. He calls me names. He
pushes your buttons. He tries to push your buttons.
Right. He does everything he can to get a reaction out of me. And I think 90% of that is him hoping that I will respond to one of his videos and get him more views.
It's for clout.
You're right. And that's the thing, is he knows that if he enters into debate, you know, no press is bad press.
Yep.
If I tag him, it's going to get him views. It's going to boost his algorithms, and he's going to have some more followers. And I can tell, like, every opportunity he has to jump in my comments and talk shit, he does. And I haven't, like, the last time he interacted with me, all I said is, I said something to the effect of, "Oh, I didn't know you were still here." And that was it. Like, I'm not gonna talk about him. I'm not gonna tag him. I'm not gonna do anything more than that.
And it's great.
But that guy that had the fawn video, it's like, I've talked about it a few times, but just to rehash because I know some of your listeners haven't heard this before.
Yeah.
It's basically they teach it in Colorado's Hunters Education. It's part of their updated book, and it's roughly 12% of the U.S. population are hunters. Roughly 12% are anti-hunting. The rest are non-hunters. They don't really have an opinion one way or another. Well,
Really?
shit like that turns a non-hunter into an anti-hunter when it comes to voting and anything else like that.
Yeah.
To me, it's the same thing as
That's a great
there's
point.
these guys that think that because they're a manly man and they love hunting, that it's okay for them to gut a deer, throw it over the hood of their truck or up on the toolbox or something, and then go drive downtown on their way home. And it's letting everybody know that they're a man and they're a hunter and they're this badass individual that whatever.
Yeah.
But what I see is they pull up to a stoplight and you have some non-hunter that has no opinions of hunting in general, but they're taking their kids to school and all of a sudden their kids look out, and right next to them at a stoplight is a deer that's cut open and gutted and bleeding and its eyes are open and its tongue's hanging out. And it's just a poor representation of everything that went into that hunt and everything that's going to happen after that.
Yeah.
They're literally showing people the worst aspects of hunting that there is. And
wrong.
it's bloody, it's messy. There's a lot of stuff there that the average everyday human does not want to see that process.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they buy their red meat at the grocery store and they don't have to see the process of how it got there. But with hunting, it's in a way it's more pure, but there's a lot of ways that it's exposed to the public in a negative light where they don't see that, that individual that has it on their toolbox spent X amount of time scouting, making sure their bow or their rifle was on, the hours that they were out in the field, the process that they took in the field to get it back to their vehicle, and then what they're going to do with it when they get home and they're going to package it. And whether they do a mount or not, it's going to be on their table. They're going to feed their family. And the only thing that person at the stoplight sees is blood and gore and the most disgusting part of the entire process. And that's how you take that 12% of anti-hunters and you make it 13% and 14% when it comes to the voting public. So anyways, long tangent. The jackass, piece of shit, absolute Chad, like you said, that decided to put a video on social media that he was going to kill baby fawns strictly because he could and he wanted to do it for likes. Those are the kind of people that literally need like a left and a right hand mentorship.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just bothers me. Like those kind of people I try not to interact with them on social media because I don't want to boost anything for their social media.
Yeah.
But at the same time, someday if I reach we'll call it 100,000. If I make 100,000 followers,
there's a promise coming here. You better watch out.
Right. If I make 100,000 followers, like if I get to that point, then I will legitimately directly call out these people and try to absolutely ruin their life if they pull shit like that. Their social media life, not their real life.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Dude. Yeah. God, that dude. Oh my God. He cooks my grits, man. Oh, that's wild. I feel like that was a solid mic drop from you to wrap this up. I honestly really do I never thought about it in that manner of you saying that's the only part of the process that people see, because I can't say that I haven't. I've killed a bunch of whitetail, and I can't say that the horns haven't been sticking up over the tailgate as we drive down from South Texas back up to North Texas to do it. Whether we, ratchet strap the head over the toolbox, no, but you can see it. You pull up to a gas station, and I've never thought about it like that, and I really enjoyed your insight on that because I feel like you made a solid point in just hunting in general. You don't get to see the entire process that you and I and the other 12% love about hunting. You see the part of, you go to the grocery store and grab your brisket, and it's in this nice bag that says Kroger or says HEB or whatever, and then you put it in the back seat of your of your Tesla and you drive home on your suburban day and nobody knows that you even have a brisket. Whereas to my brisket still has skin and horns on it that I'm going to go take care of in my driveway. And
Yeah.
it's just a different process that people don't want to see. And I enjoyed the input. That was solid.
Yeah. It's, I think everybody hunted, for the most part, everybody that's hunted has done it without thinking about the effects of it.
Yep.
And I support
100%
that
guilty.
like I support that if you are proud of what you do and like unashamed of any part of the process, I get that. And there's also the other side of that argument where people say that people need to toughen up and that they need to understand that that's what happens. My opinion is the non-hunters that don't have any desire to hunt, they still eat red meat. You know, they're not an anti-hunter. You don't need to convince them or show them anything until they are ready to take that step and actually pursue that goal. And look, you know, with all due respect, that can be put with almost anything that I am not interested in or that I think there's certain aspects to it that are not I'm going to stop there because there's a lot of tangents I could go on, but basically,
let me pause you before you go on, because you and I are having a separate conversation 2,000
Right.
miles away in our head, because I was going to say the same thing about not wanting to see certain things because
Right.
I don't care to travel down that tangent, and it's no different
Yeah.
than me hanging the head over a tailgate. And for
Exactly.
my listeners that are with me, they know what our mindset is and what we are talking about subliminally, right? And I think it makes total sense. I think you're right. I don't want to see certain aspects of life. We'll just leave it there. No other comments needed. Just like majority of those people don't want to see the certain aspects of my life, and I think keeping those separate is okay for me.
Right. And it's
Yeah.
like I will have people that will come to my house and they will sit down and they will eat elk and pronghorn and mule deer and enjoy the meal, and they'll enjoy the company, but they're not going to want to see the pictures and the process of everything that went into that. Now, do they want to see the hiking, the hunting, there's just so much to it, and the worst part is usually in transit. The absolute worst part for the public to see is in transit. So
100%.
it's something that I think hunters need to be aware of, pay attention to, be proud of it, post pictures on social media, do it that way. But the lady at the stoplight on her way to take the kids to school doesn't need to see every aspect of it. So,
Amen.
yeah.
I agree. Cool. Well, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on. I will put your handle in the link in the description below for people that want to go follow you. Colorado Guide. If you need anything, Colorado hunting expertise, anything, reach out to Josh. He's fantastic. Josh, I appreciate you taking 2 hours out of your day. I know you have a lovely wife and a son, newborn, that need your time. Trust me, I understand. I got a little girl myself, and for you to give me 2 hours of your time means more than you know to me. Truthfully, I'm not just saying that because I know how valuable the time is. So thanks, brother.
I appreciate it. No, thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, sir.
It's been fun. This is my first podcast, and I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the
Sweet.
conversation. So,
Good deal. Well, we will talk to you later, man.
all right, man.
I did. All right, that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode of After the Shot. Like I said with Josh, I'm going to put his stuff in the link in the description below. If you guys have any questions for him or for myself, please reach out. Instagram, TikTok, social media, all of them. We're everywhere. You can find everybody anywhere these days that you want to. I mean, hell, you can even find my cell phone number on Google these days for the shop. So just reach out. We'd love to help. We don't know all the answers. You just heard that, but we are happy to find them for you to make you a better hunter. So thanks for reaching out. Again, get your Hoot gear and your Ghost strings down below. Make sure you head over to knockedupoutdoors.com to get your leather patch hats. I got new ones coming out, green and sand color. They are dope. You need to check them out. They'll be on the website soon. And if you're in the North Texas area, hit me up, knockedupoutdoors.com, or find me on Google for Archery Pro Shop. Until then, you guys have a safe hunting season. Make sure you're successful. Stay knocked up.